Good afternoon. I'm really sorry I'm a bit late again. Busy days up on the spires again today. As promised, we have a couple of our amazing infant feeding team midwives here with us today. So this is Naomi behind me here, and this is the lovely Hannah. And they're going to take you through infant feeding today and hopefully answer any questions that you may have. I am going to go away and go back up to the spires. So I'm going to leave them in your lovely, very capable hands and answer any questions you may have. So remember, today is all about infant feeding. And then if you're going to join us tomorrow, I may be back in the end. Then if you're going to join us tomorrow, I think we're talking about babies tomorrow. So that will be fantastic. It will all kick in with feeding along the way. So I'm going to hand you over to Hannah to begin with, and hopefully answer all of your questions. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So as Wendy said, I'm Hannah. Sorry, we'll really try to work with this. And this is Naomi, and we're part of the infant feeding team. And we're going to start by hoping to just start talking to you about hand expressing and a few tools that will be useful for you once your baby is born. Does that sound all right, Naomi?
Absolutely, yeah.
And then we'll try and answer your questions as they pop up. And we need to be patient with ourselves, but if you can be patient with us too, with the IT, we'd be really grateful.
And we are assuming that some of you are pregnant and some of you have already got babies as well. So, please do give us some questions that are pertinent to you at this time, if you've got any worries.
Okay, so, we've got a question already. Hi, Yvonne. Yvonne Connolly has asked, with lockdown, we can't get measured for nursing bras. What do you recommend? And are midwives able to measure? Well, it's not something that midwives usually get involved in because usually people are able to go to department stores or online. There are still online retailers who are selling nursing bras, and they often have a size guide on their websites, so you can measure up and try and get the right size. But generally speaking, you're something that's not wired. So some women find that they can get on with a wire and the more flexible modern type of wires, but some women find that it can dig in certain places and they're more likely to get blocked ups and lumps and things. So we to begin with, just a soft cup with enough support, but not tight across anywhere of the breast. So it doesn't need to be a really specific bra, as long as it's comfortable. Would you agree?
Yeah, and you might need to buy 2 different sizes if you're not sure, and send one back, which I know is a little bit more expensive, but it means that you can have the option of just having a look to see what's comfy. And we recommend about 36 weeks that you would think that would be a good time to size yourself up.
So I'm gonna start by just teaching you a little bit how to hand express. So some of you will be quite familiar with your breasts, either because you've been doing some self-examination normally for things like breast cancer, for lumps and stuff, or some of you may never really have touched your breasts at all until now. So it's a good time to become familiar with your own breasts and how they work. So for hand expressing, some women will express a little bit before their baby arrives, because you do actually often leak a little bit of colostrum in the last few weeks of pregnancy. But don't worry if you don't. It's not a predictor of being able to breastfeed. Some women need the afterbirth to come away for them to really produce milk. So don't worry if you're not. But some women do notice little beads of colostrum, the first milk, on their nipple. So you would wash your hands and be in a nice, private, warm environment. And then you could start off with a bit of gentle massage. Just try and go a bit further in the middle there. And so it can be any way you like, really. It can be stroking downwards with the flat of your hand. It can be knuckles rolled gently towards your nipple, and a little bit of nipple touching or stimulation. And all of this, the idea is that it's releasing oxytocin, which is the hormone you need to release your milk down. And so all of these things are hopefully promoting some of those hormones that you need. And then what you're going to do is use your thumb and your forefinger in a C shape. And you're going to look at the bump on the end of your breast, which is the nipple, and then this dark or pink area all around, which is the areola. And you're going to go for about 2 to 3 centimeters, or an old-fashioned inch, behind the nipple base, and that's where you're going to put this C shape. And then the idea is that you would push back a little bit and then squeeze your fingers firmly together and hold for a few seconds. And it's the hold for a few seconds that sometimes people forget to do. And that's really important because colostrum is quite thick and viscous. It's a little bit like squeezing a spot. I know that's a horrible analogy, but you really need to hold that squeeze and allow time for that thick fluid to make it to the surface. So building up a rhythm and squeezing for a few seconds and releasing and squeezing for a few seconds. And what you're trying to find is actually the ducts, the milk ducts. And so there's no benefit in sliding your fingers because the ducts don't move. You're just trying to keep your fingers over those ducts. If it's sore where you're squeezing, you're probably too far towards the nipple. So just coming back a little bit and see if that's better. It shouldn't be painful at all. And don't worry if you don't see anything. Just keep going because it's the stimulation that's really, really important. So don't worry too much about what's coming out. And it's really, really good practice. It helps you to get to know your own breasts, which is important. And you're, like everything, if you do it enough, you'll sort of find where your sweet spot is and how your own breasts work. So, and then you can go to the other side. You can rotate your hands around in the C shape. So you can try and find some of the other ducts that run all the way around the breast. And if you're expressing before your baby's born because you're anticipating that your baby may be separated from you or you're anticipating some extra challenges to your breastfeeding, then you can ask your midwife for some purple syringes like this, and you can try and draw off the little beads of colostrum into the syringe and freeze it at home, and then you'll have some colostrum when you come in. But this is not a necessary part of breastfeeding if you're not anticipating any problems, and it's fine just to have a little practice and not keep any of the colostrum and wait until your baby's born. If you're expressing for your baby in those first few days, the absolute best storage place for your milk is in your baby. So you can express straight into, this is our baby doll. You can express straight into your baby's mouth, which women have been doing for absolutely centuries. It helps the baby realize where the milk's coming from and tempts them towards the breast. So it's a perfect thing. Get them to lick the colostrum off. Otherwise, you can express into a teaspoon, easily available. Just needs to be washed with hot soapy water and rinsed. Doesn't need to be sterile. And you can express into the teaspoon, into a special container that you may see in the hospital. Can you see that? Or a feeding cup. So any of these things will do, and it's not rocket science. We overcomplicate it.
Or an ice cube tray, little ice cube tray. But remember that after you've had your baby, the hand expression is your emergency care. So if you have a night where you're panicking and your baby won't attach, or you haven't quite got it, not only are you stimulating your breasts and keeping your supply going, you're protecting your milk supply, but you're also able to give your baby food until you can get some support. And that will be locally from your community midwives, or you can call the support services. But it is your emergency care as well. So don't panic, just sit down, think about it, take a deep breath. And if you've done a little bit of antenatal expression practicing before you've had your baby, even if you haven't collected, you've got that skill, remember. And so go back to that. I know you're tired, I know you've got lots of other things happening, and it's overwhelming when you've had your baby, but actually, it is a really good way of getting food frequently into your baby if you can't attach your baby in the first few hours and you're worried about it. And obviously, the more you hand express, as Hannah's already said, the more you will stimulate your breast to produce milk. So you will protect that supply in the early days by doing lots of stimulation. And also, when you've had your baby, you will be given this book, Off to the Breast Start. Off to the Breast Start, that's a Freudian slip, isn't it? Off to the Best Start. And on inside, if you can see that, there is information on how to hand express and also on storage and how long it can be out for. So that will give you that support. If you haven't had your baby and you're interested in reading about it, this is available on the Women's Centre website under the infant feeding heading. So if you go into the infant feeding section of the Women's Centre John Radcliffe website, you can access this leaflet in PDF and you can read it before you have your baby as well, because we don't give them out in like this before you have your baby. You get one after you've had your baby, but you can still access that and read it. Have we got any questions about hand expressing?
I think Charlotte, hello Charlotte, you're asking how to access help with breastfeeding during lockdown, and that you sound like you've had a very difficult time last time. So that's a really good question, and it's something we're all still trying to work out. We're not running our specialist breastfeeding clinics face-to-face outpatient clinics at the moment, but you will get support both from your midwife and your MSW, midwifery support workers, and the infant feeding team if you need them. There's somebody in every day of the week while you're in, if you're having your baby in the hospital, while you're in the hospital. And then you will have your community midwives who will visit as well. And we're available by telephone. And also we have set up something called Attend Anywhere, which is like a video link. So we can also give you video link appointments, and information will be going up on our website about how to access that. And we're really lucky, Naomi's holding a couple of leaflets here, because we're really lucky. We have the most amazing people running breastfeeding charities in Oxford. So we have Oxfordshire Breastfeeding Support. You'll get this leaflet when you have your baby, and they usually would run face-to-face drop-ins as well. And they're also offering video links, antenatal sessions as well. So it might be worth having, those of you who are still waiting for your baby, it might be worth checking out the antenatal sessions there. And La Leche as well, which are an international breastfeeding organisation, the biggest breastfeeding charity in the world. They're also extremely knowledgeable, and they're offering video appointments, both antenatal classes and information, and after your baby's born as well, support. So,
very active group in Oxfordshire. So there's lots of support for you in Oxfordshire with that as well. And also Baby Cafe in Abingdon has also got Zoom with Sue Richards. She's also doing Zoom sessions one-to-one if you should need that, and that would be on the Baby Cafe website as well for Abingdon.
And if you are coming, if your midwives are weighing your baby, for example, on day 5, and you're coming into the John Radcliffe for that, and your community midwife is concerned that you're having some extra challenges, then we are in the hospital and they know how to bleep us. So, you know, we can either give them support over the phone to support you, or pop down. So we're doing our best to try and still be there for everyone as much as we can.
And your health visitor is also going to be supporting you. They're not doing very much face-to-face, but they will also do some tele contact with you face-to-face as well after you've had your baby. So, you know, you're not alone. We know how difficult it is, and it's a very stressful time for first-time, particularly mums, or if you're having feeding problems. But you're not alone, and we can give you as much support as possibly able at this difficult time. When you're discharged, you will also get one of these, which gives you the link to all the local breastfeeding support that you will get when you've had your baby, and that's links. And obviously the NCT as well, is National Childbirth Trust is another charity which offers support.
And there's a lot of good resources online that you can watch as well. There's a website called Global Health Media, and there's also a website called firstdroplets.com. Firstdroplets.com has some good infographics and videos around positioning and attachment for your baby. So if you've got very sore nipples, or you're just not quite, you feel like you're not quite getting the latch right, then it could be worth having a look at some of those resources online. And there's also UNICEF, Baby Friendly, UNICEF UK, and they have good videos as well. I think, hello Robin, you've had your baby, congratulations. You're asking about colostrum and whether your colostrum will be coming along, and you had your baby on the 19th. So your baby is 2 days today, is that right? 2 days.
It's 21st today.
So your
so
early
day
days,
3.
early days.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if your baby's attaching at all. So in the early days, it is a really sensitive time period for milk production, and so it's really important that that you are stimulating. It sounds like you are hand expressing, and that's vitally important. And it will send the message to your brain that there is a baby that needs to have milk, and that's how. And milk production is a very simple supply and demand system. So the more you demand, the more milk will be produced. And sometimes there's a bit of a lag if you've had a difficult birth, or you didn't breastfeed straight away, or you've had a few difficulties, and it can take sometimes a few days for things to kick in. But the most important thing is not to give up. So keep that stimulation or that pumping or hand expressing going. Keep sending that message and trying to remove whatever milk is there, and feeding your baby. That if you can get your baby to attach, then lots of skin to skin, and cuddling and trying to attach your baby, and even just allowing your baby to be on you and exploring the breast. You know, if you can just let your baby familiarize itself with the breast, and every time you try and your baby doesn't attach, don't lose heart, because your baby's learning. Every time your baby doesn't latch, your baby's learning something new, and it's a journey towards the breast. And often with babies that are struggling a little bit, it's not wise to rush them to the breast. If you can keep your milk flowing and keep keep stimulating, your baby will come to the breast. But the really important thing is to prioritize your milk supply, because there is help out there, like we said, especially in Oxford. We're really very lucky, but your options narrow very quickly if you haven't put in the order for your milk. So if you haven't built a full milk supply, your options narrow quickly, and it's hard to give help when there isn't enough milk. But if you've established a good milk supply, there's lots of help, and you'll get there with the right
and
support.
Not everybody makes milk on day 3. Sometimes it takes a bit longer, sometimes milk comes in a bit quicker. Everybody's individual, and we assume that everybody will make milk until we don't see it. So most women produce enough milk for their babies, and so just be patient. The more skin to skin you do, the more you're going to stimulate your breast to produce it, as Hannah's already said. So, you know, having your baby with you more than not with you will allow your baby to have those feeding cues, which will allow you to practice more with breastfeeding. If you have your baby away from you, then those cues are often missed. And we talk about feeding cues. The baby crying is the last feeding cue. So when your baby's crying, he's already given you 4 or 5 hints to feed him. And often mums miss that because they're not aware of them. But actually, if you think about how your baby behaves in the cot when he's waking up or she's waking up for a feed, they may just start stirring in their cot, or you might see them sort of grimacing or stretching, and then they may well start to put their hand to their mouth and start opening their mouth up, and their tongue will start to come out, and they will start to be just aware, their eyes might open, and just be aware of what's happening. And those are telling you that your baby's ready to feed. So, you know, it's better to pick your baby up when those cues start, if you haven't got your baby with you, and put your baby skin to skin, and then let it find the breast with your support to actually feed. When your baby's crying, it becomes very stressful for you to feed your baby, and when you're learning how to dance with him. And you know, your baby is a new dance partner, and think about Strictly and how much practice goes in before you become good at it. You know, it's the same with a mother and a baby, with that journey, that dance that they have to do. You need to practice, and every time you put your baby to the breast, you're practicing, and then eventually you suddenly work out that you're actually an expert at it without realizing that you've learned, and that takes a little bit of time. So the more you have your baby with you, the more you practice feeding. And certainly if you're in hospital, if you've had your baby in hospital, or if you're at home and you've got your midwife with you at home and you've had your baby, use that opportunity to get that help while you've got it, because actually in these very difficult times, people are only staying in for 24 hours maximum unless they've got something that keeps them in hospital. So you don't actually have very many opportunities to get taught and supported while you're in hospital. So really make the most of it and get lots of support while you're here. And then that will get you off to a good start, and that will start things going. But primarily, as soon as you've had your baby, then we want you to have your baby skin to skin from the birth as much as you can for as long as you can. In the first hour, the golden hour, have your baby with you, and then offer your baby a feed in that first hour if you can. And if your baby doesn't want to feed, then hand express, as we've shown you, so that you can get some colostrum and start that process off. And then you know your baby's had something to eat, even if it's little tiny drops. If your baby's breastfeeding, it's only getting little tiny drops, but you don't know that. It's not getting 10 mils or 50 mils. It's getting little tiny drops, just like you get when you hand express. And that's like golden syrup. Your baby gets lots and lots and lots of goodness from that. It primes the milk production, and it lines your baby's gut to protect it from all the outside world that's coming towards it. So it's really important that as soon as that baby is born, that you have lots and lots of opportunities to give your baby that colostrum and to practice hand expressing and increase your milk supply and build that supply up so that when you go home, you've got it there.
I'm sorry, I'm squinting because I'm trying to read the comments that are coming in. Hi, Joanna. I'm trying to read what you've written. So checking for tongue tie, that's something that Joanna's asking about. It is tricky because we don't check babies, little babies, for tongue tie, because if you take lots of very early babies before about 7 days, you'll find that most of them don't use their tongues properly, depending on how much feeding they've managed to do. And so it's possible that you'll diagnose a tongue tie in a lot of very healthy, normal babies that don't have any problem, but actually what they have is just they're slow to get off to feeding and they're having the normal challenges. So that's one of the reasons people say, well, why don't you check in hospital before they're discharged? And that's the reason, because their mouths are not working totally properly yet. And we need to give them time. We need to allow mum and baby time to get over the normal early challenges of breastfeeding so that we can actually see whether it's an issue. It is more difficult to access a tongue tie assessment at the moment, because a tongue tie assessment really needs to be done with a sterile gloved hand and not just looking. We need to feel the roof of your baby's mouth under the tongue and see which way the tongue is moving, if it's got full movement and all of those sort of things. So at the moment, we're not able to offer tongue tie assessments in our breastfeeding clinics. We're hoping, in the not too distant future, to be able to reopen our outpatient clinics to see families. But your options at the moment, if you really feel that your baby needs that kind of assessment, would be either to go privately, to seek help through the Association of Tongue Tie Practitioners website to see who locally will privately assess and potentially divide your baby's tongue tie, if that's what they have. Or if you're struggling, talk to your community midwife, and if you're able to come in to the hospital for weights, then sometimes a member of our team can come down and do the assessment for you there. So that's potentially possible as well. I hope does that answer your question, Joanna? I hope so. Tongue tie is a very complicated topic, and it's also not an exact science, and it's not the case of the baby either has one or it doesn't. It's a combination of the flow that the mother has, how easy the baby is finding it to breastfeed. So some babies with quite a significant tongue tie can actually manage, but another baby might not. So it's we look at the whole holistic picture of the dyad of the mother and baby together to see, how things are going, and is the mother uncomfortable, has she got damaged nipples and all that sort of thing. So is the baby gaining weight? So just to see.
It's often not a magic wand, and we do have many babies in clinic where it isn't a magic wand after it's been snipped as well, and they still have the same problems. So, don't don't focus everything on that, and focus more on positioning your baby well and getting lots of support if you can, because often that's all that you need, and that's mostly what we find in our clinics, is that we just do lots of positioning and attachment, and that improves the feeding before we do anything else. And you know, once your baby gets breast in the mouth correctly, then it can start to use its tongue to its capacity, to its full function, and then it can start to learn to breastfeed. But if it's never given the opportunity to use its mouth properly because the attachment isn't great or the positioning isn't great, then it doesn't ever learn to use its tongue properly. And you know, it goes back to the early days when we're saying it's a new dance partner. You know, your baby's learning to dance with you, and that positioning is more important than anything else to get your baby attached to the breast well.
I hope that covers it a little bit, Joanna. And if you're unsure at all, as we said, you can call us. Our number is on the infant feeding maternity website of the hospital's page, and you can call us and leave a message. Someone will always call you back, and we'd be happy to discuss that with you over the phone. Vicky, hello Vicky, you're asking when you should start hand expressing. So I hope you were able to catch the beginning part with our woolly breast. Sorry, that was the teaspoon with our woolly breast. But you can replay it, I think, if you've missed it. We're in the process of preparing a leaflet through patient information just before everything happened, and so I'm afraid there isn't a leaflet for you to have yet. But we would say if you're needing to express antenatally, then you would start practicing at 36 weeks and start harvesting or collecting, if you like, the colostrum at about 37 weeks. Unless, of course, you're anticipating a much earlier baby, and then you could discuss that with your midwife to start collecting a little bit sooner. So that's what we would recommend, is that you start practicing at 36 and start collecting at 37 if you get it.
You don't have to hand express antenatally to produce a milk supply. You know, your breast will produce milk normally after you've had your baby in the normal physiological way. So you don't have to do any antenatal expression or harvesting. It's not required. If you have a slightly complex pregnancy, if we're anticipating that you might have some problems or you have some medical issues that you may have discussed with your midwife or with us, then it might be something we would recommend. But not everybody needs to harvest their colostrum, collect their colostrum before they've had their babies in order to make a good milk supply. That happens after you've delivered your placenta and you have skin to skin and lots of stimulation, whether it's hand expressing or breastfeeding, after you've had your baby. And remember that breastfeeding is not just about food. You know, it's about the whole picture of mother and baby not being, you know, mother not spoiling baby. And your baby might just want to be close to you and feeding because it's bored, or it's feeling a little bit anxious, or it likes the feeling of it. It's a little bit cold. It's, you know, lots and lots of different reasons.
Babies regulate their emotions at the breast, so that's the way that they can bring themselves back into harmony, is by breastfeeding often. And so if they're any of the things that Naomi listed, then suckling and breastfeeding, being close to mother, smelling her, and
hearing your heartbeat.
Yeah, all of those things can harmonize babies' emotional system back to where it needs to be. So they definitely regulate themselves at the breast, and that's very normal. A really important part of the breastfeeding relationship that drives milk production. So we often get mums, don't we, Naomi, who say, my baby's using my breast as a dummy. Yeah. And we often say, well, you know, you have to think about which came first. In fact, the breast was first, and so your baby is actually using the dummy as a breast. And so actually it's very normal part of breastfeeding. As long as it's not painful or uncomfortable, then suckling at the breast for comfort, emotional regulation, closeness and connection is completely an essential and rewarding part of breastfeeding for both the mother and baby, and that's definitely the goal.
And it grows your baby's brain.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's about growing your baby's brain and feeding your baby with the hormones of love for nutrition and emotional. Really important. But I think it's probably a good time to talk about